Hi, and thanks for joining me. I hope you're all keeping safe and well. Last year, many of you will recall that I produced a series of videos on painting the boat. At that time, I took the boat down to the slipway where external work on the boat has to be done. It's okay to do work inside the boat within the marina, but anything outside they like you to go to the slipway for. Last year I repainted the sides and the roof. I did that by sanding down, and then I used a roller. The usual technique for finishing the paintwork is to apply the paint with a roller and lay off with a brush, and I have been doing that this year. But the video you're about to see is my start on tidying up the engine bay. When I bought the boat, the surveyor said the engine bay was in a very poor condition and that I should attend to it. It's taken me 2 years to get round to that aspect. One thing I should mention is that a lot of boats have deck boards which cover the entire engine bay. So when they're lifted up, you can see the entire bay. My boat isn't like that. I have deck boards in the centre of the engine bay, and when these are lifted up I still have 2 steel decks either side. This means that there are sort of underneath areas created where it's difficult to reach into to rub down, treat and paint. Now, I've done the best I can, but you will see some things where you will say to yourselves, he's not done a very good job there. And I do acknowledge that when I'm filming. I just can't reach in. It's just not possible for me to do it as well as I would like. I've done the best I can. That's all I could say, really. I also adjust the stern gland and look into my weed hatch, literally. I have been getting water into the bilge, and I'm fairly certain that has been coming via the weed hatch. So that's something I wanted to look into, investigate and see what the solution was. And you'll see what I discovered when I did that. When I did the filming last year, I numbered each episode and I got up to number 7. So this episode is in the same series and will be numbered 8. There'll be further videos coming which will number 9, 10 and so forth. Anyway, I hope you enjoy watching. It's time, I feel, that I did some more work in the engine bay. Last year I did some work in this corner here. I've just recently dragged my anchor out from the opposite corner where I need to do some work, but I think I'm going to concentrate on the base plate. Where the old water cylinder was situated, that's now gone, and there's a clear sort of working space, but it is difficult to gain access, particularly when I have to duck down underneath these switches here. These switches make it very difficult indeed because they're on metal plates with quite a sharp point. So I have got my hard hat ready in case I need it. I'm going to have trouble stretching in to the corners where I need to get to, and I'm just going to crack on and do the best I can. I'm going to start by trying to scrape off any rust there is in this area. You probably noticed that there are 4 ballast bricks here. The ballast bricks on this boat tend to be the hollow sort of type of brick. Most of the bricks are on the opposite side to me. They were moved there some while ago when the new hot water cylinder was put in. And it is the right hand side of the boat, or the starboard side to be more correct, which has less weight on it because you have the sort of corridor running down that side. All the weight is on the port side of the boat. So I'm going to dig out those 4 ballast bricks and take it from there. This is an odd piece of kit to have on the boat. I actually bought it because I wanted a short length of this material and I cut it off the end. It's actually a strap that they use when building houses. It can be used to strap down the wall plates or strap down the cross members on a roof, that sort of thing. So I'm going to use the end of that to drag out the bricks. It's a little bit damp in the corners, one would expect, where the bricks have been sitting, but it should quickly dry out. Using this I'm going to do some scraping, and it's going to be quite useful actually. Multitasking again. That's working a real treat. Well, I'm going to sweep up what I've done so far. Then I think I'll let it dry out and have another go tomorrow probably. I think it's safer to have a couple of these boards put back. Just found another brick. It was tucked in underneath the engine. Looking good down there now. Well, I'm getting on reasonably well, so very pleasing. I've got the back window of the canopy open, which is letting the sun in, and the sun is going right into that corner at the back of the engine bay, so it is drying out very quickly. So I'm going to carry on and get the hoover out and tidy it up as best as I can, and take another look tomorrow, I think. Nice to get that off. Well, I've given it a very good clean up down there. I've brushed around and so forth, and I'm quite pleased with how I've got on. I had intended to do a bit more in this corner down here where the anchor normally rests. It all needs cleaning up and rubbing down and so forth, but to be honest, I think I've had enough for one day, so I'm going to leave it there. Well, it's looking quite good down there now. It's all nice and dry. So I'm now going to treat it with a rust converter. Previously I used a product called Furtan. This worked fairly well. I used it when I did my water tank. One of the problems with that is you have to apply it, leave it for a while and then wipe it off. That can be tricky. If you can't get good access, which I can't, it can be tricky to wipe it off. So I've now bought a different product called Vactan. With this product you apply it and it sort of sets, and that's it. It turns, I think it goes from a bluey colour to black, something of that ilk. So I'm going to use that instead. Now the instructions on the bottle say it should be applied by spray or brush. It's very awkward for me to do either of those things, so I'm intending to use a roller. I've got a long-handled roller which I've used previously, and I'm simply going to pour it on top of the surface and roll it and hope that that does what I want it to do. I can't really see any other way around it. It's difficult for me to stretch into that corner. The cables and the 2 power switches make it difficult to get down there. If it wasn't for those cables and the switches, I'm sure I could get into that corner, but I'm worried that if I go in I won't be able to back out. So let's see how I get on. You can actually see it turning blue. It's quite interesting. It was a pinky colour to start with, and I suppose it's a sort of purpley blue, but I believe once it's all dried it will be black. But it looks very colourful. Very colourful. I must say it was a lot easier and quicker than I thought it might have been. I've suspected for a while that my stern gland might be leaking. It was repacked in 2015, a few years before I bought the boat, but there is something that can be done about it. I have to tweak a couple of little nuts. This is the prop shaft that goes through to the propeller, and where it passes through the collar there is this special packing, and that packing is kept watertight with a special grease, and that is where we use the stern gland greaser. When we screw down the stern gland greaser, then it puts more grease into the packing around the prop shaft. Now the two nuts that need adjusting are these. In fact, it's two pairs of nuts. The inner nuts are the nuts that need adjusting, but they have an outer lock nut. So first of all we have to slacken off the outer lock nut so that we can then tighten the inner nut. And we do that very gradually and whilst turning the prop. Well, I've done the best I can. I did find that one of the nuts was actually loose, so the lock nut was not up against it tight enough, and the two together were turning. But I've sorted that out now. Well, I don't think the rust treatment is going to dry black as I thought it would. At the moment it's still that sort of purpley blue colour, and where it is drying it's a sort of rust colour. So I don't know. Anyway, it must help, mustn't it? I'm just getting myself ready to do some red oxide primer in the engine bay. Going to approach it in rather the same way as I did the rust treatment. I'm going to prepare the paint by stirring it and then I'm just going to pour it in. Normally I use a tray, but I think given where I'm working that just pouring it in from the top and spreading it around with my roller is the way to go. I've got just less than half a tin here, but I have got a whole tin of this size of another make, so I should be fine. It's very difficult for me when I wear this mask because my glasses steam up and I can't really see what I'm doing. There's not much left in this tin now, but for this sort of work it should be fine. Well, I've done the best I can for now. It's got a good red coating of oxide primer. I'm quite pleased with it. It looks quite an improvement already. I haven't been able to come up the sides too far, but when you look in it's going to look much better indeed. I'm going to do some more work today in the back corner down here where the anchor was stored. I'm going to rub it down and get it ready for rust treatment. Well, I've been getting on reasonably well. A phenomenal amount of rust I've dug out from under there. What I have discovered, and I'm pleased I've discovered it because I can remedy it now, is that my weed hatch is not watertight. I did replace the lining around the weed hatch and I had thought I'd done a good job. When I actually did the job, originally there was a sealant on the top of the box around the weed hatch, as it were, and there was another sealant on the underside of the lid. When I went to the chandlers to replace both these sealants, they said, no, you only have one sealant and you have it on the underside of the lid. I shouldn't be able to do that. I always had a thought the water was getting in the back here. It's quite tight at the front, and it's not so bad on the other side. I think it's along the back here where we have a bit of a problem as well. I'm now going to use the rust treatment. Not really sure how far it will go, but I've got enough to do what I want to do today. Well, I know what I've just done isn't the best of qualities. It is very difficult for me to get in underneath there and do the rubbing down. It is an area that I don't generally see, the public don't see it, so it doesn't have to be pristine. I've just tried to tidy it up, get rid of the loose rust and so forth, and make the best of the job I can, really. Don't really think I can do that much better, to be honest with you. I'm not willing to put a lot of time into an area that is just not seen and doesn't really need all the effort. My plan today is to do some of the red oxide on those areas where I was working yesterday, but before I do that I just need to scrape again the underside of where my locker is, because some rust has fallen down from there. I thought I gave it a reasonably good scraping yesterday, but I have missed one or two areas, so I'm just going to scrape that and tidy it up, and I will eventually give that some rust treatment as well. There's not actually much left in here now. Well, it was my original intention to use the roller brush under there, but I thought I'd start with the paintbrush and just do the corners. then I realised it was probably going to be better to stick with the paintbrush because I could get far better coverage, because you've got more leverage with a brush than with a roller. So I've done what I can. It's looking good. I always say that, don't I? But I'm not doing the whole area. It's just not possible for me to stretch in under there in the way that I'd like to do a proper job, as it were. I'm going to leave that to dry now and think about the next stage. In fact, the rust inhibitor I used yesterday, the Vactan, did turn the rust black, which is what I was expecting when I first used it. I think because the area I used it on, which is the drainage channels around the deck, are quite rusty, it actually did the job. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to carry on with the rust inhibitor and treat the channeling around the deck boards. Well, I think that's enough for one day. I know I haven't been out here long, but it's a beautiful day. I would like to get out for a walk and relax a little bit. So that's it for now, folks. Catch up with you later. I'm about to take a look at my weed hatch. I realised the other day that it wasn't fully watertight. I mean, I've known for some while, or suspected for some while, that water is getting in via the weed hatch, but I actually spotted something which could be part of the cause. So I'm going to investigate that now. At the best of times, the weed hatch doesn't make a good seal along the back here. But what I found is that on this left side, I can slide that completely underneath the rubber seal here. Just let that drain a moment. You can just see the propeller down there. Just checking to see that the surrounds are all dead level. They seem to be fine. This was the problem here. There's no gap along there. Take the ruler right to the back, there is a gap. But if I have it half an inch, it's about 12 mils in front, there isn't a gap. There's not much of a lip at this point here. It's very shallow and it needs to sit forward. It's only when I rest the ruler on the weld at the back here that it actually goes out of alignment. So it's not actually half an inch, it's about a quarter of an inch. But there is a bit of a... Yeah, so we're looking, the weld at the back brings it forward about a quarter of an inch. And there is a very, very slight gap, but the actual rubber seal would take that up when it's squashed flat. That is actually seating much better now because there's no gap here like there was before. So it's come forward at this point. I think when I refitted it last time, because I'm worried about it at the back, I fitted it a little bit too far back, but it's sitting very comfortably as it is. Well, I'm quite pleased I've got that sorted. I think the difficulty arose from the last time I went into the weed hatch, which some of you will recall was on a winter cruise. I stopped specially to have a look, and when I put the cover back, I obviously didn't seat it down properly. I had it a little bit too far back because I do worry about the back edge, and because it was that little bit too far back, it was on a bit of a tilt, which meant there was a gap underneath it and the sealant wasn't making a good seal. This is actually the sealant that I use. It's a nice thick rubbery seal. It's 2 inches wide or 50 millimeters, and that's all around the top of the weed hatch cover, so there is good coverage when it's sat down. It should do the job okay. I do still worry a little bit about it at the back, but it is what it is. I just need to keep an eye on it really when I'm cruising. Well, I hope you enjoyed watching that. I spent about 14 days in a 3-week period painting the engine bay, the deck boards, the lockers. I did that here within the marina. It was quite tiring, I have to say, but you'll see that in the next episode. All that remains for me to say is many thanks for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. I do appreciate it, and keep your comments coming. Keep safe, take care, and bye for now.